Weathersby's paintings were seen in a 2011 solo show, Time is the Diamond, at Some Walls in Oakland, California, and a 2010 solo exhibition, Perfect Mismatch, at Pierogi Gallery in Brooklyn. His works were also on view in various group shows in 2011 at the art galleries of the University of Maryland, Kent State University, University of Delaware, University of Dayton, and the College of St. Elizabeth.
Really what I'm going to do is just show a few recent pieces that are from the last year and talk about just a bit about something that I'm working on right now. So I'm going to, at the end of this, kind of make myself very vulnerable with some things that I'm that are open-ended questions in the work that I'm doing right now. But just to backtrack, the work that I'm doing for the last several years started in a way, I could probably tell about 5 different stories about how the work started, but I don't really trust stories very much. So I'll just select one. I had a kind of a probably about 2000 or 2001, I had a kind of an eidetic image in my head, or a dream, or a kind of a fantasy vision or something, that really simple thing. I'd been painting for a long time, but I saw a painting kind of come out from the wall and turn its back and sort of like refuse to be seen. So it took me some time to actually make work that did that. It took a few years, but then I began to make some paintings that were that faced the wall, that didn't present themselves, didn't make their image accessible to the viewer. And as soon as I actually was able to do that, I realized that the structure and the language of the physical object became apparent, and the things that weren't meant to be seen began to be visible. And so since then, I've been very interested in just playing out those different parts, seeing, and there's something about ideas that I find very, very exciting, and that helps me know which way to go, but I try to keep my thinking extremely concrete. So it can be very boring to hear me talk about work in a way, because it's very concrete. It's all about just the physical aspect of it. But I don't really believe in, for myself, I try not to think about anything that isn't embodied in the form of the work, or that I don't know how it's embodied in the form of the work. That's somehow how I think. So this is a recent piece. This is from this last year, done while I was here, actually. And it's a little bit of an evolution of this turning around and taking apart the painting. In this case, the wood structure, which is a evolution of the support system, the chassis, the stretcher bars, has kind of gotten a little out of control, and the actual paint film is now sandwiched in between pieces of wood, although a bit of it has escaped and is kind of reemerged to the surface of the surface of the painting. Between this is another recent piece. Between this one and the last one, there's a kind of a duality in the things that I'm doing. Some of them are pushing these dismantling of the language to points of confrontation, like in the last painting, where I think it's a rather extreme situation. Sometimes it's about a kind of a compression where things are reduced, and in my mind, it has to be a very decisive thing that's happening, but it can be a more subtle thing. And in this case, it's almost, for me, about an equivalence between the painted surface and this sort of wooden insertion that's sort of compressed into the surface, which is a decisively other object, other material, but has a sort of a correspondence to the painted surface, the optical surface of the painting. So this sort of represents the more, the idea of sort of subtle compression of these things together. Okay. An idea here that's Well, I think it's almost self-evident. I mean, it's it's the return of the painting, and the painting inside is a painting on stretched linen, and it's painted on the front, and it's got the wood stretcher in the right place, and the staples are in the right place. But the whole thing is, again, kind of it's been taken over by this other thing, which then contains it and also makes it something new, makes it something different. So it's sort of a cage or a container or a protection or a box, or I think it can be any number of things. But it's a regular painting, but it's a regular painting that's been sort of caught somehow. Okay. And this is even more recent, and I'm another aspect that is always coming back to me is how to array changes, breaks, contrasts in the piece. You know, is it going to be how do you interrupt a surface? You know, the surface of the painting might be continuous. It might be a kind of a uniform monochrome, or it might. I've avoided any other kinds of changes in a paint film. You know, if there's an interruption or a contrast, it's always a cut. It's always a separation of it against something else, or a removal of it, rather than having, say, you know, a surface with a form painted on it. There's the optical surface, and then there's the edge of that optical surface. So the other thing is that I'm getting interested as I work with wood a little more in these kind of stupid, you know, obsessive processes that I'm doing with a lot of hammering and nailing of little pieces of wood. There begins to be a kind of a three-dimensional space that maybe competes with the visual optical flat space of the painted film. So that's very close to where I am in a way right now. A little more than a year ago, I knew I was having this show that I had in 2010, and as a way of thinking about the show, I made a miniature scale model of the gallery and made little miniatures of all the paintings that I thought I was going to show, and I brought the paintings into the space, and was doing that for very, you know, pragmatic reasons, I thought, but I got very kind of interested and excited about the process of doing that, and especially even photographing it. The ambiguity of that, I think, is really interesting. So this is that, and I think that's reemerging in some of the things that I'm working on right now in a certain way. So I had forgotten in a way that I did that, and then about a year ago, a little bit after that show, I started making. I do a lot of very small sketches. I carry around little 4x6 cards, and I do a lot of little drawings for the pieces that I'm going to do. And as the pieces became more three-dimensional, I started to make these little three-dimensional sort of mock-ups that were structured the way a painting might be structured, but on a very small scale. And they started as mock-ups, and then the lines became blurry in the sense that they started to look like works in themselves to me, and I actually showed a group of these, 22 of these, just as a show, as a solo show, just 22 of these little pieces earlier this year. So it's kind of the return of the miniature. You can go to the next. In the same way that original image occurred to me maybe 10 years ago about the painting, the refusal of the painting, or the painting that was rejecting its kind of role and opening up other possibilities. This kind of hit me a little while ago. I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. I just had this image in my head of these things kind of coming at you. You know, this is, anybody recognize this? Name the movie. Yes, George Romero, Night of the Living Dead. You know, so I don't know, painting's dead, so what we can do with zombies now. If you take away the kind of the original, I mean, this is after the fact, I'm sort of rationalizing it, but what came to me was the image of these things and the way that zombies are always sort of presented, in the movies as sort of frontally, they're all coming at you. It's very slow. They don't move fast, but they're coming at you. The original sort of life of them, the thing that they're supposed to do, has been removed, but they're kind of doing something in a way that they're not supposed to do. So, anyway, brings me to the final slide, I think, which is next. I'm thinking about making a kind of a tableau that would function in the way I picture that sort of ensemble of the zombie painting group emerging, and I'm working with that in a kind of a form of a miniature right now, and developing pieces that I think have some of that idea embedded in it, and that's kind of where I am. So I can't say much more about that anyway. So maybe I'll wrap it up there.